Today's episode of Dungeon Crawlers Radio is brought to you by Gamers Inn, your one-stop location for all your gaming needs. Located in Lehigh City, Utah, their fun and friendly staff will be more than happy to answer any of your gaming needs. Just remember, Gamers Inn, it's where adventures begin.
It's time to power up.
Autobots, roll out! Broadcasting live from the DCR studio.
Oh yeah!
The Geek Revolution starts here.
Excellent!
Get ready for the #1 hit geek radio show out there.
Well, it is impressive, isn't it?
Because it's time for Dungeon Crawlers Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble!
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for.
And welcome to another episode of Dungeon Crawlers. We are here with author Cora Carmack, talking about her book, Roar. Really?
Sorry, I couldn't help it. It was on the radio on my way in, and then I walked in and saw the title, and it was meant to be.
I get that a lot.
All right.
But at the same time, you read the synopsis of this book, and I love I love that Roar is the name of it. Like once you read it, but sorry, I'm jumping the gun. Yes, there you go.
No, I was just gonna say, let's, if you wouldn't mind, give the listeners just kind of a little background of what Roar is.
Sure. Well, I wanted to write sort of an epic fantasy novel, and when I was a little kid, I was fascinated by storms. I grew up in Texas in Tornado Alley,
and
fun. I always wanted to be a storm chaser when I was a kid, and so when I had the idea for the book, it was sort of about taking that sort of profession of a storm chaser and putting it in a fantasy world, and instead of chasing normal storms, they would chase magic storms. So the sort of premise is that there's this world where these terrible, violent storms that are almost sentient, they're like predators, and there are a select few people with the magic to be able to control those storms, and thus they control society as a whole. And there is one main character, her name is Aurora. She's a princess, and she's set to sort of inherit her kingdom and protect the kingdom's people, but she didn't inherit the storm magic that everyone else in her family line does. So she has to figure out how to keep her crown on her own, and to do that, she decides that she's going to leave the palace behind, challenge a tempest, steal its heart, and in doing so, take on its magic. So it's a lot of fun. It's very adventurous and has cool storms and things like that. And I hope you guys will check it out.
Well, I like also in the synopsis. Sorry, I read through it on my own, and I love how she's set up to marry this. Almost, he seems like a villain. Who will dominate out of fear, and then she decides, nah, this isn't going to work for me. I'm going to do this the right way, and she goes out to fight the world, which is just.
And I'm assuming the main character. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. It's sort of one of those situations wherein she's been keeping this secret for a long time that she doesn't have this magic ability, and if anyone knew, the kingdom would sort of rip itself apart because there would be people trying to take over and everyone would be fighting. And so her mother comes up with this plan that as long as they marry her off to someone else who has storm magic, then she can keep the throne, and it'll be sort of a painless transition. But then she meets the guy, and he's kind of horrible, and so she decides she's going to sort of take her future in her own hands instead of taking the easy route.
Yeah. Now I'm assuming the main character is the person that we see on the cover of the book, correct?
It is. Her name is Aurora, yes.
Okay.
Aurora.
Aurora.
I like that.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. I love the cover. So, but not only that, you have a fantastic, story here. I mean, it's kind of like a little bit. You got a little bit of all the Disney princesses kind of smashed up here. You got the opposite of Elsa. She has magic. She's trying to hide that, but no, and that's kind of stormy type powers. But no, she doesn't have it. She's going out to get it, and you have she's going to be married off to the prince, but he's kind of the schmuck. That's a little bit like Jasmine and Jafar a little bit there. I like
There's
this.
where she just dons a disguise as like a peasant and sneaks out and ends up in a black market. So that has a bit of an Aladdin feel too.
Yes, it seems like you have a little bit of everything in there, but at the same time, it's fresh. It's its own unique story, which is fantastic.
Now, I do have to ask. I do have to ask about Roar, the actual title. You mentioned that it's like Aurora. I'm assuming that kind of ties in. Is the roar supposed to be more of how she stands up against the storm? Is it about how the storms are these beasts that literally
roar of the
have
storm?
The roar of the storm, that
It's
essence?
a little bit of everything. As the book goes on, she chooses to sort of run away, and she is going to challenge a tempest, and she runs away with a group of storm hunters, and they all sort of go by nicknames, and so her nickname is Roar, because it's sort of a simple thing that she can remember. It's really close to her own name. So it works on a very surface level that she ends up, the main character is in fact called Roar for a good portion of the book. But it also, it brings in those underlying things that we associate the word roar with, like a roar of thunder or something like that. And so it has like a little bit of both of those vibes, which is nice.
Yeah, no. Now, and this is considered YA, correct?
It is, yeah, but it definitely has crossover appeal. She's in her like late teens, and a lot of the other like storm hunters sort of vary in age. There's a couple that are younger than her, a couple that are like in their late 20s, even like early 30s, and there's one like really old dude who's like my favorite, and his name is Duke, and he's like in his like 60s. So there's sort of a lot of crossover appeal just because there's a lot of characters that are not just teenage girls.
Now, is this a standalone, or is this the first of many?
It's the first book in a 3-book series is what I've committed to right now. So I'm excited for sort of this storyline, but the really cool part of it is that the world is just so rich, and it has lots of possibilities. Obviously, you would have different storms would sort of plague different areas of the world and different climates and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity in this world to sort of expand and create other stories still set in the same world, but that are, uniquely their own story. So definitely 3 if things go well. It's a world I could see myself living in for a while, because I think there's a lot to still be explored.
Well, not only that, I can just imagine like actually having 2 different cities or 2 different groups, thunderstorms, or just different types of storms, like a thunderstorm versus a hurricane, lightning.
Even just in the planning process, I'm not an artist by any means, but I drew my little map, and I made 3 or 4 different copies of it, and my biology teacher would be so proud because I made normal copies that were cities and things like that, and then I made a copy that was just the different biomes and which ones touch each other. And then I made a different one of what would be the most common storms in every area. So I have this whole grand world in my mind, but we only see little pieces of it. So.
Oh, I want to see more. I can't wait to read this.
I mean, that's fantastic. There's such a rich world and environment. I mean, you could write stories from the past, how these civilizations came up, or anything.
There's my publisher is Tor Teen, but Tor overall, and I'm doing a short story for them sort of between book 1 and book 2 that's actually about this character who has his own book sort of within the book. The main character's favorite book is about this sailor who tries to sail away from the world to try and find a place without storms, and it's sort of this mythological journey. No one knows if he made it or if he died or anything like that. So I'm doing a short story between the books about that, and I'm so excited for it because I think writing storms on the sea will be really cool.
That's even more cool. You have a story within a story.
Yeah. I like books, so often my characters also like books.
I'm sorry, I just keep envisioning the X-Men Storm going against Shocker, going against Elsa, in this epic battle. Because if they
don't forget Sub-Zero.
That's true. Sub-Zero would have to be in there too. It's just, and I'm not trying to demean the characters of the book, but just because you have
that
those
epic of a
those
battle
elements.
It is a very because weather in general, storms are such a visual thing. And so that was one of the reasons I was so excited to write the book, is that, like, as soon as you say, like, magic storms, like, everyone has, like, a connotation in their head, you know, that they're going to picture, you know, the same, like, might and devastation that a normal storm is capable of, but on, like, epic grand scale. So I actually, when I signed a deal with Tor for a different series entirely, a different fantasy series. And then when we were in contract negotiations, I had the idea for this book. And I just, like, went to my editor and I was like, I know you're working on a contract for another book, but I really need to write this book right now. Can we do that, please? Thank you. And luckily they were totally cool with it. So
that's nice.
Yeah, I am lazy. So I sometimes listen to audiobooks. I'm a terrible person. Is this coming out as an audiobook, or?
It is. It has simultaneous release. So it comes out June 13th, which is this upcoming Tuesday, and it'll release on audiobook at the same time. I actually almost exclusively listen to audiobooks because I have an optic nerve condition that makes it difficult for me to look at computers all day long like I used to, and so I have to really budget my screen time for writing. So I almost exclusively listen to audiobooks, and it's fun because it's like a totally different sort of avenue of how to tell the story. You know, it's not like watching a movie or watching a TV show, but it's not like reading entirely either. It's like somewhere in between, like a radio play maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm every time like I get a chance to be able to listen, like mowing the lawn, driving to work, any free chance I get, really, I'll just put on an audiobook and just disappear into this new little world from an author. And so
sometimes I'll even get so into it that, like, I don't. In my head, I'm convinced I'm, like, watching a TV show or something. There was once I, like, was listening to an audiobook, and I live in New York City, and I had, like, ordered food or something, I think, and so, like, my apartment buzzer, like, went on, and I got up, got my food, sat down, and then tried to turn the TV on, and it took me a ridiculously long time to realize that I had been listening to an audiobook and not actually watching something on TV, but I had just, like, gotten so invested and pictured it so vividly that I was like, oh man, that couldn't have just been an audiobook, could it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the voice actors they get now really are amazing, and you're able to get into those books right away. So
yeah, I just barely finished Stephen King's It, and there's once or twice where I actually started yelling, where I'm like, oh come on, because I just wanted the characters to straighten up and fly straight. But yeah. Not exactly the book you want to get lost in.
No.
But I'm looking forward to getting lost in this one. This sounds really fun. Like, I want to just read it now. Daniel has our copy, so I'm going to have to order my own.
At its heart, it's like an adventure book, you know? So it's about, like, the character journey and, like, what you learn about yourself and what you learn about other people, kind of. So it definitely, this first one is very adventurous. As the series goes on, it gets sort of darker and darker. But, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it.
So it looks like it's about 380 pages, which is a good, solid book. And so it's going to get darker. That's interesting. Are there things
the storm always gets darker, Daniel.
I know. Are there things that happen in this book that are going to move over into the second book? I mean, because...
Yeah, I think, obviously I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I think at the end of the book there's a pretty clear direction in where the series is going to go. I wouldn't call it a cliffhanger, really. I think most everything is sort of wrapped up, but there is sort of this, like, kind of, you know, at the end of, like, superhero movies when they have the little extra scene at the end of the credits, you know? There's sort of just a little hint at the end about, like, what we could see happening next. So it sort of gives you pumped for what's next, but doesn't leave you, like, hanging, like you're never going to know what's going to happen, you know? So
the main story in the book wraps up, but there's just enough to say, hey, you want to read the second one.
Yeah.
All right.
Like I said, I'm a very character-driven author, and so for me, it's always about sort of character journey. So she goes on a journey in this first book, and she learns something about herself. She becomes stronger, all those things. But when she sort of gets back, because she leaves her kingdom to run away and face this storm, and when she gets back, she figures out the world is sort of kept moving without her, and so there are still more parts of her journey to go, but the hunting a storm aspect has wrapped itself up, kind of.
Nice. Now that this book is out, are you working on the next one, or is there another book? Because you kind of mentioned there was another project that you had signed up with Tor with. Are you working on that, or?
No, I'm working on book 2
Okay.
for this. So,
Yes.
I'm in the middle of that right now, which is really exciting because, like I said, everything gets darker. Everything gets sort of more complicated, more layered. There's more people involved. The storms get darker. The storms get more violent. So, in general, book 2 has been really fun to write so far. I'm still not finished yet. But lots of sort of like things that I laid in place in book 1 that are getting to sort of come to fruition in book 2. And that's always a really fun part of writing, is when you like, I waited so long and I planted the seeds for this thing and now I finally get to reveal it.
Nice. That's always fun to have that payoff for those things you planted early on.
Daniel's looking at me. I'm just thinking about what outfits these controllers of the storms would want to wear. Because on the one hand, you want something cloak-like, like a robe, or like not a robe, what a robe? No, like a raincoat. But at the same time, to keep all the weather under control. But you don't want something that flaps like a raincoat, because then what if someone had wind control and just whipped you up? But then if you had wind control, you could actually control the wind to fly with it, like in the storm.
You're way too overthinking this.
I'm sorry. It's exciting.
No, that's definitely things that like my mind crossed through when I first started plotting the book, because I knew I wanted to have magic storms and I wanted people to be able to fight the storms. But when you are actually writing something, you're like, okay, but how does a person fight a storm for real though? And so I went through all sort of those thoughts, like the different ways that would sort of handle it. And what I ended up doing was something sort of steampunk adjacent. Instead of like machines and things that are powered by steam, they're powered by storm magic. And so there's like little devices and things that the storm hunters have invented to sort of make the hunting process more efficient, and they're like run by storm magic. So that's a really fun aspect of that. As far as clothing, they wear a lot of like leather. And I sort of always picture them in sort of gear that's going to cover as much of their skin as possible, but they all wear these like sort of utility belts that have different like storm magic like hooked onto their belts for different uses. And so I always picture them having like one of those sort of really short jackets where their like hip is left open so they can like grab weapons and magic really fast. So that's sort of how I picture them. But part of the fun part about that is that there's a lot of things left up to interpretation for the reader, and so they can sort of picture it how they want.
No, I like the fact that you have this all planned out. You know exactly what type of clothes they're wearing, how the belt sits, where the magic sits, and their weapons. That's fantastic. Because I'm sure when you're writing that, it comes across that way.
Yeah, well, and one of the fun things is I was when I was first like in the drafting process for that book, I went to Comic-Con, and so I got to sort of look. It was almost like I was like shopping at Comic-Con, the different booths that had like different like cosplay costumes and things like that. I was like, oh no, that wouldn't work. That might work. And so it was really cool. I got to sort of like I bought some of my own like cosplay stuff that I thought would like fit with the book that I was writing. So I'm a giant nerd, basically.
Oh, don't worry, so are we.
That's how I shop for characters, actually. Except I get on the train and I'll just look at people and just be like, ooh, you have a story. Yeah. And so I hope that nobody in Salt Lake realizes that that I do that, because there's a reason I'm staring at you, because I'm creepy, but I'm rewriting your history.
Yeah, no. I think most writers do that. We're just observant people. Anytime I go out to like dinner with friends or anything, I find myself like eavesdropping on the people around me, and I just like can't even help it. It just comes naturally to me that I'm like trying to figure out who everyone around me is and what they're doing and what their lives are like.
That's fantastic. I love it. All right, so June 13th, it's almost here. I'm sure you already have a copy that you've held in your hands, and you've been able to feel that amazing feeling to have your book in hand. So June 13th, this comes out on ebook. It also comes out physical and audiobook, which is just fantastic. So our listeners can get it in any format that they choose. So that means Scott's getting it on ebook. Or no, not ebook, audio.
I don't know, that hardback that you have here for
I know,
a demo,
it is pretty.
It feels nice. It has a good cover, good texture. I might have to go hardcover on this one.
No, I wish they would sell things where it was like you get everything in one, because I would buy that for some.
Oh my gosh. If they would do that, I would buy all three right at once.
Right there.
It'd be fantastic. So,
only listen to us.
Yes. Tour. Make that happen. Come on. I know they're going to listen to this, so that's a great marketing ploy.
Do it now.
Yeah, you get a lot of sales. So it looks like the hardback is $17.99 and then the ebook's $9.99.
Yes.
Doesn't say how much the audiobook is, but most people just go to Audible and
if you're doing Audible, you'd probably just do a credit.
Yeah.
Which price varies depending on what you bought it for. So I'm not sure what the list price is for audio if you're just buying it outright.
Yeah. Well, for those of you that have Audible, just pick it up.
It's June's credit.
Yeah, it's June's credit.
June's credit is just sitting there, doing nothing.
It's waiting.
Instead, it could be roaring.
Yes. Wow, you really used that.
Yeah, I went there. I'm embarrassed for myself, too.
Oh.
I'm not surprised you went there. Oh, yeah, you guys haven't heard that yet.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Now, for our listeners that are excited about this series, where can they find you next? Is there going to be a convention or a signing you're going to be at, or where on the internet can they find you?
Well, you can definitely find me on the internet in lots of places. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, I think. As far as my upcoming events, my next event is in Austin, Texas at Book People. And then after that, I'm going to be doing an event back up here in the New York City area in New Jersey. And after that, I think I've got a couple of random events. I've got Louisville, Kentucky, I think Orlando, Florida, and Orange County, California. I think those are my next ones up.
Wow, that's a big jump. Orange County from New York. But it sounds like they've got a good selection of places to have you go sign, so that'd be fantastic.
I wish I was a good enough author to be able to do all that.
One day. One day, Scott. All right. Well, again, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. And for all of our listeners, go pick this up. It's a fantastic premise. The cover is beautiful. We'll post a picture up for those to look at with the recording. And with that said, we'll catch you next time.
We're out of here.